Well, as world leaders gather at the UN in New York, Syria will be one of the conflicts discussed, notably the region of Idlib, the last large rebel stronghold and the target of the Syrian government troops. The war in Syria has been going on for 7 years. Over 6 million people made refugees, 500,000 killed. Today, Bashar al-Assad is still in power, his position in fact looking slightly more solid than it was a few years ago. So where does Syria go from here? Well, to give us her perspective, we're joined by Bassma Kodmani, a co-founder of the think tank, the Arab Reform Institute, and currently part of the delegation of the democratic opposition in the Geneva peace talks on Syria for that Syrian democratic opposition. Dr Kodmani, thanks for your time. Firstly, when we look at Syria, it's been going on for 7 years. Now many people say we're in the final stages, that it's drawing to a close. Is this the case, do you think?
I think we're speaking too quickly about the end of a conflict. What we are seeing is the last area which is under the control of the opposition, and with a very strong influence from Turkey, its neighbor, the neighbor. So this area is where we have concentrated now because of the displacement of populations from all other regions, and the scenario that has been repeated in other regions has led to pushing these populations up to Idlib, to the northwest. So now in Idlib you have all sorts of a composition of all the population of Syria. You have all armed groups concentrated there, and you have extremists sitting in the middle of the civilian population. So this is not just the last chapter, it is the worst and the most difficult. And I think it is the turning point for the conflict. It can become it can become a full disaster, but that will not go on for 1 month or 2 or 3. I think we will be paying a price for years if Idlib is to have a military solution. Now is the opportunity to say Idlib should be linked to the political solution, because there is no military solution for Idlib that the world can stand.
But the political solution, I mean, the situation sounds such a spaghetti tangle of different people's interests, different conflicts. What would a diplomatic solution look like?
Look, for us Syrians, it looks very simple. It requires a full political transition in Syria. When we say a full political transition, we're looking at a security plan for the country, a plan for the rule of law in the country to stop those executions in prisons, to stop the arbitrary arrests, the torture, and the extraordinary jurisdictions. These are steps that are very concrete. Then we need a constitution, of course, because Assad's constitution is a farce. It just justifies his dictatorship. And we need to go towards safe elections, fair and controlled by the United Nations, actually fully supervised and monitored by the United Nations. So there is a roadmap for transition in Syria, and Assad will have to go at some point in an orderly manner. No one is saying go and kill him in his palace. We do not want the Gaddafi scenario. That's not what we're looking at. But we are looking to see if Putin in Russia understands that military victory does not mean re-legitimizing Assad. Assad, now we know, we have just received now proof that he has his signature on hundreds and thousands of orders of execution and torture in Syria's prisons. So the noise around his guilt and his responsibility for these crimes just prevent him from thinking for a minute that he can govern the country again.
But give me an idea of what kind of guarantees could be put in place in the short to medium term if we got an agreement on the table to ensure that things have changed since the revolution, because it does very much look like Russia and Assad have the upper hand at the minute.
Well, the point is Russia has the upper hand. Assad is very weak, and it is certainly not thanks to his forces that he has regained control. It is thanks to Iran-led militias and air cover from the Russian Air Force. This is the reality of Syria today. It is not Assad. It is Russia with Iranian-led militias, Iran-led militias. Now, these two players need to understand, and Russia knows, that it will not get reconstruction of the country, no normalization. The West knows that there will be no return of refugees to Syria if Assad remains with the fear that he spreads across the country. And finally, I think most importantly, any peace plan, any transition would need to start with the departure from Syria of those Iran-led militias, because they represent about 100,000. They are not Syrians, and they have nothing to do in Syria.
But give me an idea, because you mentioned there the refugees. Some of them have started to return, notably from Lebanon, to the emergency shelters they've been living in for years. Some 50,000 are reportedly gone back to destroyed cities, according to the Lebanese authorities.
Well,
but one wonders, what are they going back to? You know, how will Syria restart again?
Well, a few are going back when their houses are still exist, and when they do not fear repression or arrest or enrollment in the army by force. So that represents a small percentage of the refugees. There's over 1 million men who will not go back because they know they will be forced to join the army and go forced and fight their own brothers in the north of Syria or other areas. Therefore, the problem sits with how do we ensure safe return for these people? And the word safe is the most important. They will go back if it is safe. I will go back if it is safe. But for the moment, this is not something that can happen.
So a guarantee of safety, of course, first and foremost on the agenda. It sounds like still a complicated position there in Syria, and we'll have to see where talks go from here. But thanks a lot for giving us more clarity on it. Dr Bassma Kodmani, thanks very much for coming into studio and speaking to us at France 24.